In my previous life, I desperately pleaded with my mother-in-law to sign the consent forms to save my sister-in-law's legs. Yet 3 years later, she blamed me for preventing her from waiting for her top surgeon father, violently pushing me down the stairs when I was 9 months pregnant, and ending the lives of both me and my unborn child. Reborn, I stare down at her severely injured legs and tightly grip my mother-in-law's hands. "You are absolutely right, Mom. We must wait for Dad to come back and perform the surgery." "No. I forbid it. You cannot operate on my daughter." The shrill, piercing scream tore through the sterile, antiseptic-laden air of the hospital corridor. My eyes snapped open, the harsh fluorescent lights above momentarily blinding me. As my vision cleared, I saw my mother-in-law, Eleanor Sterling, physically barring the entrance to the operating theater, her arms outstretched like a frantic mother hen protecting her chick. "My daughter is a generational talent, a prodigy in the world of ballet," Eleanor shrieked, her manicured finger jabbing into the chest of the exhausted trauma surgeon. "If I allow you second-rate surgeons to operate on her, what if you leave her with permanent nerve damage? What if she can never dance again?" The surgeon sighed, rubbing his temples in utter frustration. "Mrs. Sterling, we don't have time. My husband, Dr. Richard Sterling, the chief of surgery at Mercy General, is already on a flight back," Eleanor interrupted, her voice echoing down the hall. "I demand that we wait for him to perform the surgery. He is a master of his craft. I will not settle for anyone else. My daughter's legs must not suffer any lasting complications." I stood frozen a few feet away, the chill of the hospital floor seeping through the soles of my shoes. My heart hammered wildly against my ribs, a phantom ache pulsing in my lower abdomen. I looked down at my flat stomach, then at my trembling hands. The realization hit me with the force of a freight train. I was back. I had been reborn. The memories of my previous life crashed over me like a suffocating tidal wave. In that life, my sister-in-law, Mia Sterling, had just received a coveted invitation from a world-renowned ballet academy. Overjoyed, she had taken her sports car out for a reckless celebratory drive and wrapped it around a steel guardrail. When she was rushed to this very emergency room, her beautiful legs were a badly injured nightmare, completely unrecognizable. Eleanor and I had rushed to the hospital the moment we received the devastating call. By the time we arrived, the doctors had already issued a critical condition notice. "Her situation is deteriorating rapidly. She requires immediate surgical intervention, or she will not make it through the night," the lead surgeon had pleaded back then. "Her lower extremities are severely compromised. And even with immediate surgery, there are immense risks. Please, family members, sign the surgical consent forms so we can save her life." In my past life, Eleanor had reacted exactly as she was doing now, refusing to let Mia be wheeled into the OR, screaming hysterically that only Richard was qualified to touch her precious daughter. She had snatched the consent forms from the doctor's hands and torn them into tiny shreds. I had been the foolish, desperate peacemaker. I had spent agonizing minutes pleading with Eleanor, explaining the life or death stakes, begging her to see reason. Ultimately, it was I who had grabbed a new set of forms and signed on the dotted line, taking the crushing responsibility onto my own shoulders. Because of me, Mia was rushed into the OR and received timely treatment. 3 hours later, when Richard finally arrived, breathless and frantic, Mia was just being wheeled out of a successful surgery. Her recovery had been miraculous. Both Richard and Eleanor had showered me with praise, thanking God that I had taken charge. Mia, too, had held my hands, tearfully calling me the best sister-in-law in the world. But the warmth of that family was a venomous illusion. 3 years later, heavily pregnant at 9 months, I was standing at the top of our grand staircase when Mia approached me. Without a second of hesitation, the girl I had treated like my own flesh and blood violently shoved me down the stairs. I can still feel the sickening crunch of my bones, the warm red fluid, the fading kicks of my unborn child. I had reached out, choking on my own breath, begging, "Mia, please, save me, save my baby." Mia merely stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed over her chest, a twisted euphoric smile dancing on her lips. Look at you now, Chloe. This is your karma. She had spat maliciously. If you hadn't stopped my mother, I could have waited for my father to operate on me. With his legendary skills, I would have recovered perfectly. I wouldn't have failed my audition for the academy. It's all your fault. So go to hell, Chloe. Richard and Eleanor had rushed out upon hearing the commotion. Instead of calling an ambulance, Eleanor looked at my fading form and coldly agreed with her harmful daughter. Mia is right. If Chloe hadn't interfered, we would have waited for your father. I could have given you a flawless recovery. Richard had murmured in agreement, turning a blind eye to my demise. I passed away in agonizing despair, my heart filled with a hatred so profound. I swore I would return as a vengeful spirit to tear them all limb from limb. And now, the heavens had heard my parting curse. I looked at Eleanor, currently shredding the consent forms into confetti, just as she had in my past life. The desperate doctor turned to me. Chloe, please. You have to talk some sense into your mother-in-law. The patient simply cannot wait any longer. My husband, Liam Sterling, was also a surgeon at this very facility, which meant I was familiar with many of the staff here, from dropping off his meals. Before I could formulate a response, Eleanor spun around, her eyes wild with paranoid fury. Why are you all so desperate to cut into my daughter? Are you trying to harm her? Eleanor shrieked at the medical team. I don't care what you say. Today we wait for Richard Sterling. I stepped forward, masking the ice in my veins with a look of feigned concern. Mom, maybe we should just listen to the doctors for now, and figure out the rest later. I offered weakly, knowing exactly how she would react. Predictably, Eleanor exploded. Shut up. She roared, shoving me violently by the shoulders. I didn't resist. I let the momentum carry me backward until my hip collided spectacularly with a row of plastic waiting room chairs. With a soft dramatic gasp, I allowed my eyes to roll back and slumped to the floor, conveniently losing consciousness. Chaos erupted around me. Through the veil of my fake swoon, I felt paramedics rushing to lift me onto a stretcher. As I was wheeled away from the war zone, Eleanor's disdainful mutter reached my ears. What a useless, fragile burden. Let her think that I would let them carve their own path to hell. I was promptly settled into a quiet private hospital room, hooked up to a saline drip, and left to rest. Once the nurses were gone, I snuggled under the crisp white sheets and actually took a profoundly comfortable, refreshing nap. I needed my strength for the show that was about to unfold. By the time I awoke, stretching my limbs like a satisfied cat, I knew all hell must have broken loose down the hall. I slipped into a standard-issue hospital gown, deliberately leaving my hair disheveled and my face pale and makeup-free, feigning weakness. I stumbled out of my room, playing the part of the devoted, terrified sister-in-law to absolute perfection. I spotted a young familiar nurse scurrying down the corridor and grabbed her arm, my voice trembling with artificial panic. What happened? Is my sister out of surgery? Is she okay? The young nurse looked at me with profound pity, casting a nervous glance toward the intensive care wing. Oh, Chloe. It was a disaster. Your mother-in-law aggressively blocked the doors for hours. She forced everyone to wait for Dr. Sterling to arrive. He was delayed, and didn't get here for 3 agonizing hours. I widened my eyes, letting my jaw drop in perfectly choreographed shock. By the time he got into the OR, the nurse whispered grimly, the tissue necrosis in her lower limbs was irreversible. I gasped, pressing a trembling hand to my chest. Did she die? I wondered, a spark of vicious hope flickering in my chest. Her condition had spiraled out of control. To save her life and stop the infection from reaching her vital organs, Dr. Sterling had to personally surgically remove both of his daughter's legs. Ah! I shrieked, instantly slapping both hands over my mouth. It was a necessary gesture, mostly to hide the manic, euphoric smile that threatened to split my face in two. Surgically removed. The Sterling family finally got their fairy tale ending. The precious princess had endured agonizing hours just to wait for her beloved, brilliant father, and he had personally severed her dreams with his own scalpel. It was divine justice. Under the nurse's sympathetic gaze, I forced myself to blink rapidly, squeezing out a few miserable tears. Oh my God, what are we going to do? My poor Mia. She was supposed to be a world-famous dancer, I wailed softly. As I approached the door to the ICU, a cacophony of vicious screams and breaking glass shattered the solemn hospital silence. Richard and Eleanor were engaged in a brutal, physical brawl right outside Mia's room. Eleanor looked entirely unhinged, her designer clothes rumpled and her hair flying wildly as she tore at Richard's surgical scrubs with clawed hands. "Richard, you monster! Mia is supposed to grace international stages. She is a prodigy. How could you remove her legs?" Eleanor shrieked, her voice cracking with hysterical grief. "Damn you to hell. I trusted you. I waited for you. Give me back my daughter's legs." Smack! A sharp, deafening slap echoed down the hall as Richard, pushed beyond the brink of his patience and drowning in his own guilt, struck his wife across the face. The sheer force of the blow spun Eleanor around, nearly knocking her off her feet. She staggered, clutching her rapidly bruising cheek, entirely stunned. Before she could muster another scream, Richard unleashed a torrent of furious abuse upon her. "You ignorant, arrogant fool. It is your fault she lost her legs. Your idiotic stubbornness caused this," he roared, his face purple with rage. "The doctors warned you repeatedly that her condition was critical. They begged you to sign the consent forms. Why didn't you sign them?" Eleanor trembled, whimpering in shock. "Do you have any idea how close our daughter came to dying on that table?" Richard yelled, his voice breaking. "If you hadn't been such a colossal idiot and allowed them to operate immediately, she would never have needed surgical limb removal. You doomed her. You ruined her life." The reality of her actions finally seemed to pierce Eleanor's delusion. She covered her face, sinking against the wall, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't know it would be this bad. Mia, my poor tragic girl. What is she going to do now, when she wakes up and realizes her legs are gone? It will destroy her." Right on cue, the heavy doors of the ICU clicked open and a nurse stepped out cautiously. "The patient is regaining consciousness," she announced. Eleanor's wailing stopped instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated terror. Richard, the widely celebrated god of surgery, looked equally paralyzed. How could he possibly face his daughter after personally operating on her severe wounds? Recognizing my cue, I stepped out from the shadows, linking my arm gently through Eleanor's trembling one. "Mom, Richard," I said softly, my voice dripping with manufactured empathy. "The most important thing right now is stabilizing Mia's emotions. She is the one in pain. If she wakes up alone and realizes what has been lost, she might lose the will to live," I reasoned. My words hung heavy in the air. Richard and Eleanor remained silent, too cowardly to lead the way. I gently pulled Eleanor forward, guiding her into the dimly lit hospital room. Mia was lying on the bed, heavily medicated, staring blankly at the ceiling. My eyes immediately dropped to the lower half of her bed. The pristine white blanket lay completely flat. There were no bumps, no shapes beneath the fabric. I noted with dark satisfaction that the amputation was high, starting right from the upper thighs. Suddenly, I felt a piercing gaze on me. I looked up to meet Mia's eyes. The foggy haze of anesthesia was rapidly vanishing, replaced by a terrifyingly lucid, malicious glare. It was a look of immense superiority, completely out of place for a girl who had just survived a horrific accident. "Chloe," Mia croaked, her voice dry and raspy. "You came back too, didn't you?" I feigned a look of absolute horror, stepping back slightly. So, Mia was reborn as well. That explained everything: her strange calmness, her immediate hostility. She knew I had behaved differently today, and she knew exactly what that meant. A cruel, triumphant smirk curled her pale lips. "You were smart to stay out of my way this time. If you had tried to ruin my recovery again, I would have made you pay dearly," she sneered, entirely confident in her impending victory. I couldn't help it. A genuine bright laugh bubbled up from my throat. "Yes, absolutely," I replied cheerfully. "You finally got exactly what you wanted. I'm sure all your dreams will come true in this life." Mia lifted her chin arrogantly, soaking in my supposed submission. But her moment of glory was interrupted by Eleanor, who finally broke down into loud, wretched sobs at the foot of the bed. Mia frowned, looking at her mother with mounting annoyance. "Mom, what is wrong? Why are you crying like someone passed away?" Eleanor opened her mouth, a fresh sob tearing through her throat, but Richard quickly stepped forward and clamped a hand over her shoulder, silencing her. "It is nothing, sweetheart. Your mother is just exhausted from the stress," he lied through his teeth. Mia wasn't entirely convinced. Her eyes darted toward me, narrowing with suspicion, likely assuming I was plotting some new way to sabotage her perfect future. I decided to give her exactly what she was looking for. I let my gaze slowly drift down to the flat expanse of the blanket, my eyes widening with morbid fascination and barely concealed glee. Catching my look, Mia's face drained of all color. Slowly, with trembling hands, she reached down, dragging her palms over the top of the blanket. She found nothing but air. Panic, raw and primal, seized her features. She grabbed the edge of the blanket and violently threw it back. For a second, the room was dead silent, as she stared at the heavily bandaged stumps ending abruptly near her hips. Then, she let out a scream that sounded like a soul being torn apart in hell. "Ah, where are my legs? Where are they?" she shrieked, thrashing wildly. "Help me, Dad, save me!" In her blind, hysterical panic, she lunged toward Richard's silhouette at the side of the bed. Without her lower body to anchor her, her center of gravity was entirely gone. Richard lunged to catch her, but he was a fraction of a second too late. Mia plummeted from the mattress, hitting the hard linoleum floor with a sickening thud. The impact instantly ruptured her fresh surgical wounds, and scarlet fluid rapidly blossomed across the white bandages. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed into a dead faint. Richard scooped his injured daughter off the floor with a frantic shout and bolted toward the emergency operating rooms. I, of course, had to maintain my facade, so I jogged anxiously behind them, watching the chaos unfold. When we reached the OR doors, Richard froze. Eleanor, who had just caught up, shoved him desperately. "Get in there. You have to save her. Don't let anything else happen to Mia." Richard backed away, his hands shaking violently, his face a mask of profound agony. I can't face her. I can't operate on my own daughter again," he whispered brokenly. The trauma of hacking off his own flesh and blood's limbs had broken the great surgeon. I watched him crumble, wondering if it was just his daughter he couldn't face, or the operating room altogether. If his legendary surgical career was over, the universe truly was dispensing poetic justice. Another surgical team took over, and after an hour of frantic restitching, Mia was stabilized and wheeled back to her room, still unconscious. Eleanor trailed behind the gurney, weeping a river of tears, while I tactfully excused myself under the guise of buying some food for everyone. I strolled out the hospital's front entrance, and exactly as I remembered from my past life, ran into Ethan. Ethan was from a prominent, wealthy family, and had been the sole object of Mia's unrequited love for years. He had come to visit her today, carrying a lavish basket of flowers. In this life, I was more than happy to play the gracious hostess. I greeted Ethan warmly, gave him Mia's room number, and insisted he go right up to see her. I then took my time, purchasing a warm meal and a coffee, enjoying the crisp evening air before leisurely walking back into the building. As I reached the stairwell near Mia's ward, I collided with Ethan. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. He was pale, sweating profusely, and his chest heaved in panic. "Ethan, are you leaving already? Won't you stay a bit longer?" I asked with innocent politeness. He waved his hands frantically, nearly tripping over his own feet. No, I have an urgent matter, I have to go," he stammered, practically fleeing down the stairs. I watched him run, suppressing a dark chuckle. It was hilariously pathetic. How agonizing it must be for the proud, beautiful Mia Sterling to know that the man she loved had looked at her mutilated body and fled in total disgust. But this was only the beginning. "Mia, you murdered me and my child. In this life, I will plunge you into a despair so profound. Death will feel like a mercy." Inside the sterile hospital room, Mia had completely lost her mind. She grabbed anything within reach, plastic water cups, a vase of cheap flowers, the television remote, and hurled them at the walls, shattering them into pieces. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, driving Richard and Eleanor out of the room. Get out! Get out, both of you! You're just here to laugh at me, aren't you? Mia shrieked, her voice hoarse and ragged. She pointed a trembling accusatory finger at Eleanor. This is all your fault. You're supposed to be my mother. You stopped them from operating on me, let the infection spread, and forced me into this limb removal. Then she turned her venom on Richard. And you, my so-called brilliant father. You are a monster. How could you cut off my legs? How could you mutilate me? You should have just let me die. Mia sobbed hysterically, thrashing against her pillows. What is the point of living like this? I am a freak, a half-human monster. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Get out! Richard and Eleanor stumbled out of the room, looking utterly defeated and covered in their own tears. Watching them, my heart felt completely cold. There was not an ounce of pity in me. This was the exact outcome this deranged family of 3 had demanded in their past lives. Now that they had reaped what they sowed, they were choking on the bitter harvest. Once Richard and Eleanor had retreated to the waiting area to compose themselves, I pushed open the door and stepped into Mia's room. The moment Mia laid eyes on me, she looked as though she had been electrocuted. Chloe, you bitch! She spat, her eyes wild with hatred. Why didn't you stop my mother? In this life? Why didn't you step in? If you had just stopped her and signed those papers, my surgery wouldn't have been delayed. I could have kept dancing, just like before. Are you jealous of me? Do you hate me because I killed you in our last life? Is that it? You came back just to ruin me. I didn't say a word. I calmly walked over to her bedside, opened the hot takeout container of greasy beef stew I had bought earlier, and dumped the entire contents directly over Mia's head. The thick brown gravy and chunks of meat slid down her hair, plastering her fringe to her forehead and staining her hospital gown. She gasped, instinctively reaching up to touch the sticky, foul-smelling mess on her face, before letting out a high-pitched, horrified scream. I casually pulled up a chair and sat down next to her bed, a sweet smile on my lips. You really are the most pathetic narcissist I've ever met. No matter what anyone does, in your twisted mind, it's always someone else's fault. I whispered smoothly. In our last life I begged your mother to let the surgery happen. Because of me, you kept your legs and fully recovered. And how did you repay me? When you failed your audition for that elite European dance academy. Because you simply weren't talented enough. You blamed mine. You said the early surgery ruined your potential. You held a grudge so deep that you ended the lives of me and my unborn baby. I said, my voice dropping to a lethal hiss. So in this life, I decided to respect your family's wishes. I let you wait for your precious father. And look at you now. Why are you so angry? Isn't amputation the grand prize your family practically begged for? What is wrong, Mia? Don't you love it? I stood up, leaning over her bed, and deliberately let my eyes fall to her bandaged stumps. I covered my mouth, feigning absolute revulsion. Oh my God, that is just horrific. If you go out in public looking like that, you'll terrify the children. You look like a hideous creature. It is truly repulsive. The combination of the humiliation, the hot stew on her head, and my vicious mockery was too much. Mia choked on a sob, her eyes rolled back, and she passed out from sheer rage. Once she was unconscious, I efficiently went to work. I took a damp towel and meticulously wiped her face and hair clean, changed her soiled gown, and threw the dirty linens into the laundry hamper. By the time I tucked the clean white blankets around her shoulders, she looked like a peaceful, sleeping angel. Half an hour later, Richard and Eleanor returned, their eyes red and puffy. I immediately splashed some water on my face to fake tears and met them at the door, my voice trembling. Mom, Dad. Mia's mental state is deteriorating rapidly. I choked out, dabbing at my eyes. If we don't intervene, I am terrified she's going to suffer a complete psychological breakdown, or worse, try to end her own journey. Hearing this, Eleanor collapsed into Richard's arms, wailing all over again. That night when Mia finally woke up, she immediately began screaming and cursing my name into the empty room. Chloe, you absolute bitch. You're the one who should be dead. Mia's shrill voice echoed down the hospital corridor. When Eleanor and Richard rushed into the room, Mia was pointing a shaking finger at me. "Mom, Dad, don't let her fool you. She did this to me on purpose. She purposely let Mom delay the surgery so I would lose my legs. She is evil, she is a poisonous snake." Mia screamed, spittle flying from her lips. I shrank back into the corner of the room, burying my face in my hands, weeping softly. If cursing me makes Mia feel even a little bit better, then I will gladly take the abuse, I sobbed, playing the role of the endlessly forgiving, battered saint. My exaggerated display of martyrdom only acted as gasoline on Mia's fiery rage. She thrashed on the bed, entirely losing her grip on reality. "You have to believe me. I was reborn. I lived this life already," Mia shrieked, desperately grabbing at Eleanor's sleeve. "In our last life Chloe stopped you, Mom, and I got the surgery in time. But this time, she is back for revenge, because she couldn't stand seeing me succeed. In our past life I pushed her down the stairs and we watched her die. She hates us. She came back from the dead to destroy our family." Mia ranted, her eyes wide and manic. "Mom, Dad, call the police. Lock her up. She is a demon." I let out a loud tragic wail. "Oh no, Mia is hallucinating. She is talking nonsense," I cried, looking at Richard with desperate eyes. "Dad, if we let her go on like this, her brain might suffer permanent damage from the trauma." Eleanor was absolutely terrified. She wrapped her arms around her thrashing daughter, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mia, my baby, stop it, please." But Mia kept fighting, screaming about rebirth, murder and time travel. Finally, Richard could take it no longer. He signaled for the attending nurse to administer a heavy dose of a potent sedative. A needle pierced Mia's arm, and within seconds, her frantic screams dissolved into a slurred whimper before she went completely limp. I gently approached Richard and Eleanor, my voice thick with fake emotion. "Mom, Dad. Mia is in so much pain. Every time she looks at us, she is reminded of what she lost. Staying here, surrounded by doctors and her healthy family, is pure torture for her right now." I paused, letting the silence settle before planting the seed. "I actually have a friend who runs an exclusive private rehabilitation and psychiatric retreat out in the countryside. It's called Oak Ridge. The scenery is breathtaking. Surrounded by mountains and lakes, the facilities are state-of-the-art. And they have an elite medical team that specializes in severe trauma and post-surgery depression. Perhaps sending Mia there for a few months to recover would be best for everyone. A change of scenery might heal her mind, and it will give us time to mentally prepare and renovate the house to accommodate her wheelchair," I suggested softly. Eleanor looked hesitant, the thought of sending her daughter away tearing at her heart. But Richard, exhausted and desperate for a solution to the madness, nodded thoughtfully. It sounded like a logical plan. Over the next few days, Mia continued to throw violent, manic fits every time she woke up. Finally, Richard and Eleanor made up their minds. But before committing, they insisted on touring the facility first. I eagerly volunteered to drive them to Oak Ridge. I knew this place well. In my past life, I had discovered through a news scandal that Oak Ridge Retreat was nothing but a high-end scam. A hellish, abusive asylum dressed up as a luxury resort, designed to drain the bank accounts of wealthy families who wanted to hide their problematic relatives. In this life, I was more than happy to book Mia a one-way ticket to hell. In reality, I didn't know the owner of Oak Ridge at all. But when you arrive in a luxury SUV with an open checkbook, the director of a corrupt facility will gladly pretend to be your childhood best friend, or even your own mother. I had slipped the director a hefty sum before the tour, ensuring everything looked absolutely pristine. Richard and Eleanor were given the VIP walkthrough. They admired the manicured gardens, the serene lake views, and the seemingly attentive, smiling nursing staff. "This environment truly is spectacular," Richard noted, taking a deep breath of the fresh mountain air. "I feel more relaxed just standing here. A few months in this tranquility, and Mia should recover her spirits." "And the medical staff seems highly qualified," Eleanor added, reviewing a fabricated brochure. "Let's have Mia stay here. Once she is mentally stable, we'll bring her home. We need to install ramps and an elevator anyway," since she'll be bound to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Within a week, the paperwork was signed, and Mia was forcibly transferred to Oakridge. Naturally, she fought like a cornered animal, screaming, biting, and thrashing as the orderlies strapped her to a transport chair. I convinced Richard and Eleanor to go home and rest, promising I would stay behind to help Mia settle into her new room. Once the heavy oak door clicked shut, leaving just the two of us in the sterile window-barred room, I dropped the caring sister-in-law act entirely. "So how do you like the luxury suite I picked out for you?" I taunted, crossing my arms. "I hear the orderlies here have incredibly short tempers. I suggest you behave, little sister, otherwise the only one who will suffer the consequences is you." Mia glared at me, her dark, sunken eyes practically glowing with demonic hatred. She looked as though she wanted to destroy me with her bare teeth, but then, surprisingly, she began to laugh. A chilling, high-pitched giggle that sent a shiver down my spine. "Chloe, you think you've won," Mia giggled, her eyes wide and unhinged. "Aren't you afraid of what my brother will do to you when he gets out? Aren't you terrified of Liam finding out how you've tortured me?" My breath hitched in my throat. Liam, my husband, who was currently sitting in a state penitentiary. Seeing the color drain from my face, Mia's smile grew wider, entirely triumphant. "My brother went to prison for you, Chloe. He ruined his life to protect you. And yet behind his back, you are abusing his injured sister. When he gets out, he will destroy you. He will never ever forgive you." "Hi." I stared at her for a long silent moment, masking the chaotic storm of realization hitting my mind. Without a single word, I turned on my heel, walked out the door, and drove away. My romance with Liam Sterling could have been adapted into a blockbuster Hollywood movie. We met while I was on a lakeside vacation. My rented boat capsized, and Liam, diving into the freezing water, saved me from drowning. It was love at first sight for him. For an entire year, he pursued me with grandiose, breathtakingly romantic gestures. Once I finally agreed to date him, we were engaged within 6 months and married shortly after in a fairy tale wedding. Everything was perfect until a fateful night a year ago. Mia had gone to a nightclub and gotten dangerously drunk. I went to pick her up, but a belligerent man tried to drag her away. In the ensuing physical altercation, both Mia and I were bruised and battered. The police arrived, and the man was held in a holding cell for a few days before being released. I thought it was just an ugly footnote in our lives. But a month later, that same man was involved in a brutal gang fight and was severely wounded in the chest. He was rushed to Mercy General straight to Liam's operating table. The surgery failed. The man lost vital fluids and passed away on the table. The man's family had deep political connections and immense wealth. They refused to believe it was a medical accident. They accused Liam of premeditated harm, claiming he sabotaged the surgery as revenge for the nightclub incident. They demanded a full investigation. Shockingly, the medical board's investigation revealed that Liam had indeed made multiple severe, inexplicable deviations from standard surgical protocol that directly caused the man's death. The victim's family was merciless. They refused any financial settlement and pushed for maximum charges. Liam lost his medical license and was sentenced to prison for unlawful fatal harm. On the day of his sentencing, he held me tightly in the courtroom lobby. Through tears he whispered, "Chloe, when he hurt you at that club, it broke me. I lost my mind in that operating room. I made a mistake, but I don't regret doing it to protect you. Chloe, I beg you, while I am locked away, please take care of my parents. Please take care of Mia," he pleaded. In my past life, I had been overwhelmed with guilt and sorrow. Nodding frantically, promising to dedicate my life to his family, I watched him being taken away in handcuffs and cried until I fainted. Screech! I slammed on the brakes, pulling my car over to the side of the coastal highway, gasping for air as if I had been drowning. Remembering the brutal way Mia and Eleanor had ended the lives of me and my baby in my past life, a dark icy resolve settled over my heart. I could never forgive them. Not even if Liam begged on his knees. Not even if Jesus himself asked me to. Since Mia was locked away in Oakridge, Eleanor had sunk into a deep depression, playing the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. I took it upon myself to cure her grief. I took her to high-end country clubs to play tennis, arranged lavish spa days, dragged her to elite charity galas, and funded endless shopping sprees. Slowly but surely, Eleanor became addicted to the luxury and the distraction. She stopped visiting Mia, and fully immersed herself in hedonistic pleasure. Everything was falling perfectly into my carefully laid traps. My enemies were blindfolded, skipping happily toward the edge of the cliff I had built for them. Then, one sunny afternoon, I returned home carrying bags of fresh groceries. As I walked into the grand foyer, I stopped dead in my tracks. Sitting in the living room was Mia, and sitting right beside her, paroled 6 months early, was my husband, Liam Sterling. I dropped the heavy bags of organic groceries onto the hardwood floor of the foyer, the dull thud echoing through the quiet house. Before I could even form a greeting, a shadow loomed over me. Smack. Sep smack. A vicious, open-handed slap struck across my cheek with explosive force. A violent wave of dizziness washed over me, and the metallic taste of blood instantly bloomed in my mouth. I swallowed the bitter copper taste, slowly raising my head to look at my husband in absolute bewilderment. Liam, what is the meaning of this? I asked, my voice trembling. Liam Sterling's face was as dark as a thundercloud, his eyes radiating a cruel glacial coldness I had never seen before. He glared at me, his lip curled in disgust as he began to list my alleged crimes. Chloe, I never imagined you could be so utterly malicious. How could you send my sister to that man, eating hellhole of an asylum? He snarled, stepping closer. Have you forgotten? I went to federal prison for you. Is this how you repay my sacrifice? If I had known you were this venomous, I would have left you in that freezing lake. I never should have saved a snake like you, he spat, his words dripping with sheer venom. My eyes widened in disbelief, a profound icy chill seizing my heart. Liam. How could he say such horrific things to me? Did he have any idea that in our past life, his beloved family had murdered me and our unborn child? I bit the inside of my cheek, forcing myself to remain calm. Don't just listen to Mia's one-sided story. Can you at least hear my explanation? I pleaded. In my mind, I was furiously searching for excuses for him. Eff'n tiffn't know about the past life. He has just been brainwashed by the sister he grew up with. He just got out of a maximum security prison, and doesn't know the truth. Feventy, I reasoned internally, but he brutally cut off my train of thought. Save your breath. I won't listen to a single word of your pathetic lies. Liam interrupted, his voice like cracking ice. You have thoroughly disappointed me, Chloe. I never thought you were capable of such evil. Liam, I am disappointed in you too. I thought bitterly, you are going to get on your knees and beg Mia for forgiveness. You will spend the rest of your miserable life serving her, tending to her every need as atonement. If you refuse, I will never forgive you, Liam commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. I looked deeply into Liam's eyes one last time, needing absolute confirmation. So, you've condemned me to a life sentence without even a trial? I asked quietly. Impatience and profound disgust flooded Liam's features. If I had it my way, I wish you were the one who had your legs amputated. My Mia is so beautiful, so perfect, and you ruined her. You deserve the absolute worst, Chloe. If I didn't need you here to act as her caretaker, I would force you to pay for this dearly. I studied his expressions carefully. There was not a shred of hesitation or falsehood in his eyes. He genuinely meant every word. He truly wanted me dead. Liam, my legs hurt so much, a frail, sickeningly sweet voice whimpered from the living room couch. Having apparently enjoyed the spectacle of my humiliation and pain, Mia let out a delicate cry of distress. Instantly, the sociopathic coldness on Liam's face vanished, replaced by frantic panic and suffocating heartache. He rushed to her side, carefully holding her shoulders, his voice trembling with anxiety. Mia, does it hurt terribly? Don't be afraid, sweetheart. Liam is here. I will always stay right by your side, he cooed gently. He scooped her up into his arms, carrying her toward her ground floor bedroom. As he carried her away, I looked up and caught Mia's eye over his shoulder. She shot me a look of triumphant, mocking arrogance. Her lips moved silently. I easily read the words she mouthed. Wait for death. Chloe C. I retreated to the master bedroom and locked the heavy oak door behind me. All the adrenaline suddenly vanished, leaving me entirely drained. I slid down the wooden panels of the door, collapsing onto the carpeted floor, sitting there in the silence. My mind became terrifyingly sharp and clear. Suppressed memories, tiny, dismissible red flags from our relationship, suddenly flooded my consciousness. Liam had always played the role of the devoted doting husband. But whenever Mia was involved, his so-called love for me evaporated. Mia always received his ultimate devotion. I recalled a specific incident from our early dating years. Liam, Mia, and I had taken a road trip to a cabin in the mountains. While driving on the highway, Mia and I got into a heated argument over the GPS route. When we pulled into a remote snowy rest stop, Mia aggressively shoved me. Instinctively, I shoved her back. I was perfectly fine, but Mia dramatically twisted her ankle, falling to the icy pavement. I remember the look Liam gave me. It was murderous, as if he wanted to destroy me. Without saying a single word to me, he gently lifted Mia, placed her in the passenger seat of his SUV, and sped off. He abandoned me in the freezing cold at a deserted mountain rest stop. I had frantically called his phone dozens of times as the sun set, but he ignored every single call. Eventually, I had to call the local state troopers, just to get a safe ride back to the city. When I finally got home, Liam was waiting. He hugged me, apologizing profusely. He claimed that Mia's legs were vital for her future as a ballerina, and he had simply panicked. He said he was so frantic rushing her to the emergency room, that he forgot about me, and he couldn't answer his phone because he was busy dealing with the doctors. I had been deeply hurt and gave him the silent treatment for a month. But Liam had been relentless, groveling, sending flowers, playing the perfect gentleman, until I finally caved and forgave him. There were countless other minor incidents like this, all painting a clear picture. Liam's obsessive care and extreme attention for his sister were highly unnatural. Liam didn't love me nearly as much as he claimed. In fact, it was entirely possible he didn't love me at all. Wiping my face, I stood up and immediately made a phone call. I paid a premium, exorbitant fee to a highly discreet private investigator to dig into the Sterling family's history. While waiting for the PI's findings, I forced myself to lay low and bide my time. I played the role of the submissive, repentant wife. Every day, I bought fresh groceries, cooked elaborate meals, and meticulously cared for Mia. Richard was currently out of state, attending a prestigious surgical symposium in Chicago, and wouldn't be back for a while. Eleanor was on a luxury wine tasting tour in Napa Valley with her country club friends. This left only me, Liam, and his legless sister in the massive estate. Mia took every possible opportunity to flaunt her disturbing intimacy with Liam right in front of me. Whenever she saw me looking exhausted or heartbroken, she would giggle and nestle deeply into Liam's embrace, soaking in his undivided attention. Half a month later, a thick manila envelope arrived from the private investigator. When I read the contents, I realized the truth was far more twisted, sick, and absurd than my darkest nightmares. The documents revealed a hidden family secret. For the first few years of their marriage, Richard and Eleanor struggled with severe infertility, so they adopted a young boy named Liam. 3 years later, against all odds, Eleanor miraculously conceived and gave birth to Mia. As Liam grew older, he developed a sickening romantic obsession with his non-biological sister. When Richard and Eleanor discovered this forbidden, twisted affection, they were utterly horrified and furious. They forcibly shipped Liam off to a boarding school, and later medical school in Europe, to separate them. 7 years later, Liam returned to the States, seemingly cured, and took a position at Richard's hospital. The adult Liam still doted on Mia, but he carefully hid any inappropriate, romantic gestures, to completely ease his parents' suspicions. He aggressively pursued and married me, but the horrifying reality was that Liam had never let go of his sick love for Mia. Instead, years of forced separation had only mutated it into a deeply deranged obsessive paranoia. He had learned to wear a mask he found me to use as a convenient prop, a beard to blind his parents and society. allowing him to stay permanently tethered to his beloved sister's side without raising eyebrows. The shared glances, the excessive coddling. Mia undoubtedly knew about his intense taboo feelings. She reveled in it. And I was nothing but a pawn in their disgusting psychological game. The fairy tale lake rescue. Staged, the botched surgery that sent him to prison because he couldn't stand seeing me hurt. A complete lie. The truth was that the drunken man at the club had laid hands on Mia. Liam couldn't handle the rage of seeing another man touch his obsession, so he intentionally severed a fatal artery during the surgery. Everything he did was for Mia. Yet he meticulously manipulated the narrative to make it look like a tragic sacrifice for Sindaimi, effectively chaining me to his family with guilt. Fine. Excellent. Every single member of this family was rotten to the core. They wanted to play God with my life. I would make sure not a single one of them escaped the fires of hell. During the half-month I spent caring for Mia, I quietly made some significant modifications to the house, hiding miniature, high-definition cameras in every common area and bedroom. With the stage fully set, I simply had to wait for them to tear each other apart. Early one morning, while serving breakfast, I accidentally fumbled a heavy ceramic mug, spilling scalding hot milk directly onto Mia's sensitive, scarred stumps. Mia let out a spine-chilling, agonizing shriek that nearly shattered the chandelier. Liam's eyes turned red, rimmed. He looked at me with a hatred so pure it was almost physical. "Chloe, you just wait, I'm going to kill you," he roared before scooping Mia up and rushing frantically to the hospital. The moment his car sped down the driveway, I swiftly packed my bags and fled the estate. Before tossing my phone onto the passenger seat, I sent frantic, panicked text messages to Richard and Eleanor. Something terrible has happened to Mia. Please, come home immediately. I checked into a discreet luxury hotel downtown, opened my laptop, and connected to the hidden camera feeds. Liam certainly didn't disappoint me. On the screen, Liam had brought Mia back from the clinic. The deeply deranged, psychopathic brother had pinned his injured sister against her wheelchair, kissing her with a frantic, undeniable, and deeply sexual hunger. Just as they were lost in their sickening embrace, the front door burst open. Richard and Eleanor had rushed back from their trips. Richard and Eleanor were traditional, upper-crust socialites, walking in on their adopted son violently making out with their biological daughter nearly gave them simultaneous heart attacks. Richard marched forward and delivered a devastating backhand to Liam's jaw, knocking him back, and immediately ordered him out of the house. Despite Mia weeping and begging, Richard remained entirely immovable. Eleanor fell to her knees beside Mia's wheelchair, sobbing hysterically. "Mia, are you out of your mind? Your brother is a married man. How could you entangle yourself in something so disgusting with him?" Hearing her mother defend my marriage, Mia instantly lost her temper. "Chloe is a nobody, a piece of trash. How could she ever be worthy of my brother?" Mia screamed. "If it wasn't to put your minds at ease, why else would Liam use that bitch as a shield?" "Mom, Dad, why would you rather believe that pathetic woman over me?" Mia yelled wildly. "You have to believe me. Chloe came back for revenge, because in our past life, our whole family ended her life." Eleanor, utterly horrified by her daughter's unhinged ranting, wailed even louder. "Oh God, Mia is losing her mind again. We have to call Oakridge Retreat and send her back to the asylum." At the mention of the horrific asylum, a look of sheer terror washed over Mia's face. Watching this family tear each other to pieces on my glowing laptop screen brought me a profound, euphoric satisfaction. Terrified of being locked away again, Mia instantly clamped her mouth shut, not daring to utter another word about rebirth or past lives, completely submitting to fear. Eventually, Richard and Eleanor calmed down. They decided to banish Liam and personally dedicate their lives to caring for their daughter. But I had absolutely no intention of letting them play happy family and live out the rest of their days in peace. After all, in my past life, they hadn't given me a single ounce of mercy. In the dead of night, while Mia was in a deep medicated sleep, I remotely activated the two-way audio speakers on the hidden cameras installed in her bedroom, using an advanced AI voice cloning software. I began playing a synthesized conversation between Richard and Eleanor, into the dark room, looking at this daughter of ours without her legs. It just makes me sick. I can't bear to care for her anymore. Richard, we need to find a way to quietly commit her to a psychiatric ward permanently. The AI-generated voice of Eleanor echoed coldly. Patience. Liam is obsessed with her. If we force her out now, Liam will turn on us, and he's the only healthy child we have left to rely on for our retirement. The fake Richard replied, for now, just crush up some heavy sedatives and put them in her meals. Keep her docile and quiet. Mia jolted awake in her bed, surrounded by the suffocating darkness. The fabricated voices echoed in her head, wrapping around her fragile sanity like a vice. She grabbed handfuls of her own hair, her face twisted in absolute horror and despair. Every single night, at precisely 3 a.m., I set my alarms to play this customized psychological nourishment into her room. After just a few days of this, Mia was reduced to a paranoid, shivering wreck. She was utterly convinced her parents were plotting to throw her back into Oak Ridge Retreat, or worse, poisoning her food. Living in constant, suffocating fear, her conflicts with Richard and Eleanor escalated into violent daily screaming matches. What did you put in this? It tastes metallic. Are you trying to drug me? Mia screamed one afternoon, aggressively sweeping a tray of hot food off her lap and onto the floor. Eleanor, pushed to her absolute limit, broke down crying, grabbed her designer purse and fled to the country club to play bridge and escape her nightmare. Richard furiously reprimanded Mia for her ungrateful behavior, slammed the door, and went back to his office at the hospital, completely washing his hands of her. Left alone, terrified and desperate, Mia summoned her twisted knight in shining armor, Liam. Weeping in his arms, she poured her heart out. In order to secure her absolute safety and bind Liam to her forever, Mia completely crossed the line and offered herself to him. Sitting in my hotel room, watching the two of them passionately entangle themselves on the screen, a wave of profound nausea washed over me. What an absolutely disgusting pair of animals. I decided it was time for their parents to enjoy the show. Using a burner phone, I sent an anonymous, frantic text to Richard and Eleanor, claiming Mia had just attempted self-harm. They rushed back to the estate in record time, bursting through the front doors, only to be greeted by the grand, nauseating spectacle of their children's incestuous lust. Unable to handle the sheer perversion, Richard and Eleanor lunged forward, viciously beating the two of them. In the chaotic brawl near the top of the staircase, Mia wildly shoved Eleanor. Eleanor lost her footing, tumbling backward down the steep marble stairs, breaking her neck, and passing away on impact. Seeing the red fluid pooling around his wife's head, Richard screamed. Without a second of hesitation, Liam grabbed Richard by the collar and hurled him down the stairs right after her. Having just ended 2 lives in cold blood, Liam didn't even flinch. He truly had the ice-cold veins of a hardened ex-convict. Under the cover of darkness, Liam used his underworld connections to have the bodies illegally incinerated at a private crematorium. To the public, he officially reported that his parents had tragically died in a fiery, explosive car crash on a remote canyon road. A week later, at the lavish, high-profile funeral for Richard and Eleanor, Liam and Mia still refused to let me go. Seeking to destroy my life completely, Mia turned on her phone and started a live stream, crying to her thousands of followers about my alleged crimes. The hashtag #EvilSister-in-law-destroys-family instantly started trending online. Mia was inherently beautiful, and as a former award-winning dancer who had suffered a tragic amputation and the sudden loss of her parents, she was the ultimate sympathetic victim. The moment she appeared on the live stream with her tear-streaked face and black mourning veil, she drew in massive waves of internet traffic. Because my sister-in-law maliciously blocked my surgery, my wounds became severely infected, and the doctors had to amputate my legs. But I endured it. For the sake of our family's peace, I forgave her. Mia wept softly into the camera. When I was discharged, she decided my disability was a burden. She manipulated my parents and threw me into a horrific psychiatric asylum, leaving me there to rot. Thank God my brother got out of prison and brought me home. But my sister-in-law couldn't stand seeing me live under her roof. She picked a fight with my brother and abandoned us, declaring that this family could only have one of us. Mia sobbed, her voice breaking perfectly. My parents, desperate to save Liam's marriage, went out looking for her. That is when they got into the tragic car crash. Oh God, I have no legs, no parents, and no home anymore. Chloe, please, I am begging you to come back to my brother. I will leave. I will find a quiet place to just fade away alone. She wailed, playing the martyr to absolute perfection. Mia's heartbreaking performance in the livestream caused viewership to explode. What followed was a tsunami of unprecedented cyberbullying directed at me. I was doxxed. My phone number, address, and photos were plastered across the internet. This sick couple was fiercely determined to drag me down to hell with them. Unfortunately for them, I was a vengeful spirit who had already crawled back from hell. They wanted me dead. The feeling was entirely mutual. While the guests wept and the live stream rolled, the heavy oak doors of the memorial hall swung open. I walked in, wearing a stunning crimson designer gown, flanked by 5 massive, heavily armed private bodyguards. A collective gasp echoed through the church. Relatives and friends glared at me with absolute disgust and sheer hatred. In Mia's livestream, the chat was a blur of chaos. The comments were so vile and heavily laced with profanity that the platform's automatic moderation system was rapidly censoring them into asterisks, proving just how much toxic hatred they had incited against me. Liam stepped forward, his eyes full of fabricated sorrow. Chloe, God is watching everything we do. Don't be so venomous, he preached. I let out a bright, ringing laugh. Actually, Liam, I brought a special gift for you, your lovely sister, and everyone watching online today. Let's let the actual facts speak for themselves, I announced clearly. Seeing the confident smirk on my face, Liam frowned deeply. He lunged forward to grab me, but my bodyguards instantly formed a human wall, shoving him back forcefully. Unhindered, I walked straight up to the memorial podium, plugged a small encrypted USB drive into the AV system, and cast my meticulously edited video compilation onto the massive projector screen hanging above the caskets. The screen flickered to life. Clip 1T Death Annoy. Eleanor aggressively blocking the operating room. Why are you all so desperate to cut into my daughter? Are you trying to harm her? Clip 2 Sigh Mia in her hospital bed, screaming hysterically. You have to believe me. I was reborn. In our last life, Chloe stopped you, Mom, and I got the surgery in time. But this time, she is back for revenge. In our past life, I pushed her down the stairs. She hates us. She came back to destroy our family. The whispers in the church suddenly stopped. Absolute stunned silence filled the room. Clip 3. A hidden camera feed from the living room. Liam stroking Mia's hair. You know I've always loved you. Chloe is just a shield. A meaningless tool to blind our parents. From now on, she will be nothing but your lifelong maid. If I want to torture her for fun, you can't go soft. Mia giggled. Of course not. Anything you want, my little princess, Liam replied. Clip 40Y. The violent confrontation. Eleanor screaming. What are you doing? You are brother and sister. Liam is a married man. And Mia shrieking back. Why shouldn't we? We are truly in love. Clip 5D The ZT. The grand finale. The horrifying footage of the staircase. Mia violently shoving Eleanor. Go to hell, old hag. I know you wanted to lock me in the asylum. And Liam, coldly tossing Richard down to his death, before the two of them passionately kissed over the pool of red fluid beside their parents. Like a twisted king and queen claiming their throne, the screen faded to black. The video ended. I turned to Liam and Mia, smiling brightly. Well, do you like it? This is the ultimate testament to your epic romance. Mia let out a guttural, shattered scream, completely collapsing onto the floor. Liam roared like a wild animal and charged at me, but the bodyguards immediately tackled him, pinning him face down against the church tiles. I had prepared for these rabid dogs well in advance. The internet completely broke. This is more twisted than a Hollywood horror movie. Absolutely insane. Oh my God, the sister-in-law is the real victim here. This entire family is made of pure evil. I have literal chills. The husband is an absolute psychopath. Within minutes, the wailing sirens of police cruisers surrounded the church. Dozens of officers stormed in and dragged Liam and Mia away in handcuffs, with the hidden camera footage and the financial records of the illegal cremation as undeniable proof. Their fate was entirely sealed. For premeditated double fatality, there was only one path left for them: the maximum penalty sentence. Months later, on the day of her scheduled final sentence execution, I went to the maximum security prison to visit Mia, bound to her wheelchair behind the thick plexiglass. She slammed her fists against the window, crying and screaming. I don't want to be reborn anymore. I want to go back to my first life. Take me back. I leaned in close to the glass, a cold, serene smile on my lips. There is no going back. This is exactly the ending you always deserved. Go to hell, Mia, and stay there, leaving Mia's broken, hysterical screams echoing in the sterile prison visitation room. I turned around and walked out into the bright sunlight. The wicked had finally reaped their ultimate punishment. And as Liam's legal widow, I successfully inherited every cent of the massive Sterling estate. Looking up at the clear blue sky, the dark clouds of my past lives had finally faded away. My true beautiful life was only just beginning.